Have you ever looked at a stranger and wondered who they really were? Sarah Bennett thought she knew. She saw a shivering old man in a tattered coat, clutching an empty cup in the corner of a diner that smelled of grease and regret. Everyone else saw a nuisance. Sarah saw a human being. Against her boss's screaming orders, she paid for his coffee and a warm slice of pie. She thought it cost her $5 and her job. She was wrong. That $5 didn't just buy a meal, it bought her a seat at a table she didn't even know existed. Because that homeless man wasn't homeless at all. He was Arthur Sterling, the billionaire industrialist who had been missing for 3 weeks. And he was looking for someone to trust with his empire. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. It was 10:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of night that felt heavy, pressing against the fogged-up windows of Louis' Diner. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burnt bacon grease, stale coffee, and the damp wool of customers trying to escape the downpour. Sarah Bennett wiped down counter number 4 for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Her wrist ached, a sharp, throbbing reminder of the carpal tunnel she couldn't afford to treat. At 28, Sarah looked tired, not just sleepy, but soul-tired. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a fraying, messy bun, and her apron, once white, was stained with the shift's casualties: ketchup, mustard, and a splash of gravy. "Hey, Bennett, stop daydreaming and refill table 6. The voice cracked like a whip across the diner. It was Rick, the manager. Rick was a man who sweated even when standing still, a petty tyrant who ruled Louis' Diner as if it were a Fortune 500 company. He sat on a stool near the register, scrolling on his phone, looking for reasons to dock pay. "On it, Rick," Sarah said, her voice steady. She had learned long ago not to let him see her flinch. She grabbed the coffee pot, feeling the heat radiate through the glass. Table 6 was a couple of truckers arguing about sports. They didn't look at her when she poured, they just grunted. That was fine. Sarah preferred invisibility. Invisibility meant she could think about the eviction notice sitting on her kitchen table. 3 months behind. Her landlord, Mr. Henderson, had given her until Friday. If she didn't come up with wait $100, she and her 6-year-old son, Toby, would be sleeping in her Corolla. She moved automatically, the routine ingrained in her bones. Pour, wipe, smile, repeat. Then, the bell above the door chimed. A gust of cold wind swept through the diner, making the truckers shiver. A man shuffled in. He was the definition of invisible to everyone but Sarah. He wore an oversized army green coat that was soaked through, the hem dragging on the linoleum. His grey hair was matted against his skull, and his beard was a tangled mess of silver and dirt. He stood in the doorway, dripping, his eyes scanning the room with a mixture of fear and defiance. "We're closing the kitchen in 20, Rick shouted from the counter, not even looking up. "Restroom is for paying customers only, Pops." The old man flinched. He took a hesitant step forward, his hands trembling as he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a few coins, mostly pennies and nickels, and counted them in his palm. It wasn't enough for anything on the menu. Sarah felt that familiar tug in her chest. It was the same feeling she had when she looked at Toby sleeping in his winter coat because they couldn't afford the heating bill. The old man limped toward the counter, taking the stool furthest from Rick. He placed the coins on the Formica surface. "Just hot water, please?" His voice was raspy, like dry leaves scraping over concrete. "Maybe a tea bag if this covers it?" Rick looked up then. He sneered, a look of pure disgust twisting his oily face. "Hot water? This ain't a charity ward. It's $2 for tea. You got 70 cents there. Get out." "Please," the man whispered. He looked like he was about to collapse. His hands were shaking so bad the coins rattled against the counter. "I'm very cold. And I'm very busy, Rick snapped, standing up. He was a big man, imposing. Beat it, hobo, before I call the cops. The diner went quiet. The truckers at table 6 stopped eating to watch the show. No one moved to help. Sarah slammed the coffee pot down on the burner. The noise made Rick jump. I've got it, Sarah said, her voice cutting through the tension. Rick spun around. Excuse me? Sarah walked over to the register, pulled a $5 bill from her apron pocket, her only tips from the last 2 hours, and slammed it on the counter in front of Rick. I'm buying his coffee, Sarah said, her eyes blazing, and a slice of the cherry pie, heated. Rick stared at the money, then at Sarah. His face turned a blotchy red. You think you're running this place, Bennett? You think you can just invite the trash in? He's a paying customer now, Sarah said, grabbing a mug. So sit down, Rick. She turned to the old man. Up close, he smelled of rain and old paper. But his eyes, they were startlingly blue, clear, sharp, and intelligent. They didn't match the rest of him. For a second, Sarah felt like she was being X-rayed. Sit, she told him gently, pointing to a booth by the radiator. I'll bring it over. The old man looked at Rick, then at Sarah. He nodded slowly. Thank you, miss. You don't know. You don't know what this means. It's just coffee, she said, giving him a sad smile. We all need something warm sometimes. As the old man shuffled to the booth, Rick leaned in close to Sarah, his breath smelling of onions. You're on thin ice, Bennett. One more stunt, and you're out on the street with him. Do you hear me? Sarah ignored him. She cut the biggest slice of pie left in the display case. She didn't know it yet, but that slice of pie was the most expensive meal she would ever serve. The old man ate with a dignity that didn't match his clothes. He didn't shovel the food, he used the fork properly, cutting small pieces of the crust, sipping the coffee without slurping. He spent an hour in that booth. Every time Sarah passed by to refill his mug, he would offer a small, polite nod. Name's Arthur, he said quietly during her third refill. Sarah, she replied, checking over her shoulder to make sure Rick was in the back office. You from around here, Arthur? I am from a different time, I think, Arthur said, staring out the window at the rain. I'm looking for something I lost. Hope you find it, Sarah said. She slipped a grilled cheese sandwich wrapped in a napkin onto the table, shielding it with her body so the cameras wouldn't see. For the road. It's rough out there tonight. Arthur looked at the sandwich, then up at Sarah. His eyes were watery. Why? He asked. You don't have much yourself. I can see your shoes are taped together, Sarah. Sarah blushed, tucking her foot behind her other leg. We help where we can, right? My dad used to say, if you have more than you need, build a longer table, not a higher fence. Arthur froze. He repeated the phrase softly. Build a longer table. He looked at her, really looked at her, as if memorizing her face. Your father was a wise man. He was a mechanic, Sarah said with a shrug. But yeah, he was. Bennett! Rick's voice boomed from the kitchen. If that bum isn't gone in 2 minutes, I'm calling the precinct. Arthur stood up immediately. He tucked the sandwich into his deep coat pocket. I don't want to cause you trouble, Sarah. It's okay, she whispered. Just take care of yourself. Arthur hesitated. He reached for a paper napkin from the dispenser. He pulled a stub of a pencil from his pocket, a gold-plated mechanical pencil that looked oddly out of place in his dirty fingers, and scribbled something on the napkin. He placed the napkin under his empty coffee cup. I won't forget this, Arthur said. The pie was excellent, but the company was priceless. He walked out into the rain, the bell chiming his departure. Sarah went to clear the table. She picked up the cup and saw the napkin. It wasn't a phone number or a creepy message. It was a sequence of numbers and a name. R. Sterling. 555-019999. Tell him the Bluebird has landed. She frowned. It looked like nonsense. She was about to crumple it up and throw it in the trash when Rick stormed out of the kitchen. Is he gone? Rick barked. He looked at the table. Great. Now disinfect that whole booth. I don't want his diseases spreading to the breakfast crowd. Sarah sighed, pocketing the napkin instinctively, mostly just to annoy Rick by not throwing it away immediately. I cleaned it, Rick. It's fine. You know what isn't fine? Rick walked up to her, invading her personal space. Your attitude. I told you no charity cases. You defied a direct order in front of customers. You made me look weak. I made you look human, Sarah snapped. She instantly regretted it. Rick's face went purple. That's it. Hand over the apron. Sarah's heart stopped. Rick, please. I need this shift. I need this job. I have Toby. Should have thought about Toby before you decided to run a soup kitchen on my dime, Rick spat. Get out, and don't bother coming back for your last check. I'm docking it for the food you stole and the uniform cleaning fee. You can't do that, Sarah cried, tears stinging her eyes. Watch me. Get out. Sarah was trembling as she untied her apron. She threw it on the counter. She grabbed her coat and walked out into the rain, the door slamming behind her. She stood on the sidewalk, the cold water soaking her instantly. She was fired. She had $18 to her name. Friday was 3 days away. She was going to lose the apartment. She was going to lose everything because she gave a homeless man a slice of pie. She put her hands in her pockets to keep them warm, and her fingers brushed against the rough texture of the napkin. She pulled it out, shielding it from the rain. R. Sterling. 555-05-9. It was crazy. It was a homeless man's rambling. But she had nothing else. No other leads. No other hope. She walked to the bus stop, sat on the bench, and pulled out her cracked smartphone. Her hands shook as she dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Sterling Law Offices, good evening. A crisp, professional female voice answered. This is the emergency line. How may I direct your call? Sarah blinked. A law office? At 11 p.m.? Sarah stammered. I met a man, an old man. He told me to call this number. He told me to say... She felt ridiculous. He told me to say, the Bluebird has landed. There was a silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence. Sarah was about to hang up, assuming she was being pranked or that the receptionist thought she was crazy. Then, the voice came back, but the tone had changed completely. It was urgent, sharp. Ma'am, do not hang up. I am transferring you to Mr. Roger Sterling immediately. Stay on the line. Click. A generic hold music played for exactly 3 seconds before a deep, booming male voice cut in. This is Roger Sterling. Who is this? Where did you get that phrase? My name is Sarah, she said, her voice small against the traffic noise. I'm a waitress. An old man named Arthur came into my diner tonight. He left this on a napkin. Arthur, the man breathed out, sounding like he had just run a marathon. Is he safe? Is he with you? No, he left. He walked out about 20 minutes ago. Listen to me very carefully, Sarah, Mr. Sterling said. Tell me exactly where you are. Don't move. I am sending a car for you. A car? Look, I just want to know if he's okay. I got fired because of him and... You got fired? Roger Sterling interrupted. Good. That simplifies things. Sarah, the man you served tonight is Arthur Pellington Sterling, my father. And until 3 hours ago, the world thought he was dead. Sarah dropped the phone. It clattered onto the wet pavement, the screen glowing in the dark. Arthur Pellington Sterling. The name was familiar. Everyone knew the name. Pellington Industries owned half the city. They built the hospitals, the skyscrapers, the shipping docks. Arthur Sterling was a billionaire, and he had been missing for weeks after his private yacht was found, drifting and empty off the coast of Maine. Sarah scrambled to pick up the phone. "Mr. Sterling." "I'm here, Sarah. A black SUV is 2 minutes away. The driver's name is Marcus. Get in the car. Your life is about to change, but you need to trust me. There are people looking for my father who do not want him found. And now, they might be looking for you too." The black SUV didn't just pull up. It glided to the curb like a shark, breaking the surface of the water. The window tinted so dark it looked like a slab of obsidian rolled down an inch. "Sarah Bennett?" The voice was gravel and steel. Sarah nodded, clutching her phone and the soggy napkin against her chest. "Get in." The back door clicked open. Sarah hesitated for a fraction of a second. The rain was freezing, seeping into her socks, but the interior of the car looked like a different planet. Warm, leather-clad, and smelling of expensive cedar. She thought of Toby, sleeping at the babysitter's house, oblivious that his mother had just lost her job. She thought of the eviction notice. She climbed in, the door sealed shut, cutting off the noise of the city instantly. The silence was heavy. The driver, a man with a neck as thick as a tree trunk and a scar running through his eyebrow, looked at her in the rearview mirror. "Mr. Sterling is waiting at the penthouse," the driver said. "My name is Silas." I thought the man on the phone said." Sarah started, confused by the shift in names, but Silas just merged into traffic with aggressive precision. "We change protocols every hour, Ms. Bennett. Safety." The drive was a blur. They didn't head toward the suburbs. They drove straight into the heart of the financial district. They stopped in front of the Sterling Tower, a glass needle piercing the night sky. Silas ushered her through a private back entrance, bypassing the security guards who looked like they were ready to tackle anyone without a 7-figure salary. The elevator ride made her ears pop. When the doors opened, Sarah stepped onto plush white carpet. The room was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire rain-swept city. Standing by the fireplace was a man who looked like a sharper, younger, and far more dangerous version of the homeless man she'd just served. Roger Sterling was in his 40s, wearing a suit that cost more than Sarah made in a year. He held a tumbler of amber liquid, his knuckles white as he gripped the glass. "You're the waitress," Roger said. It wasn't a question. He walked over, his eyes scanning her, assessing her. He didn't look at her like a person. He looked at her like evidence. "I'm Sarah," she said, straightening her spine. "And I want to know what's going on. Your father, Arthur, he was shaking. He was hungry. He was alive," Roger said, his voice cracking slightly. He took a breath, composing himself. "For 3 weeks, the police told me he fell overboard. They told me to plan a funeral. But I knew Arthur Sterling. He doesn't fall. He gets pushed." Roger gestured to a leather chair. "Sit, please." Sarah sat on the edge of the chair, terrified she'd stain it with her wet jeans. "Who pushed him?" "That's the billion-dollar question," Roger said grimly. "My father built Pellington Industries from nothing, but lately the board of directors has been restless. They wanted him to step down. They said he was losing his touch, old-fashioned. When he refused, he vanished." Roger paced the room. "He has a condition, early-onset dementia. It comes and goes. When he's lucid, he's a genius. When he's not, he wanders. Someone in our inner circle used that against him. We think they switched his medication, confused him, lured him onto the boat and tried to get rid of him." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. But he escaped? Somehow. And he's been on the streets, hiding, paranoiac. He doesn't trust anyone. Not the police, not his security team, not even me. He thinks everyone is compromised. Roger stopped and looked at Sarah intensely. Until tonight. He contacted you. He gave you the code, Bluebird. That was the code word he used to use with my mother. Roger knelt down so he was eye level with Sarah. Sarah, why did you help him? He looked like a beggar. He had nothing. Because he was cold, Sarah said simply. And because nobody else would. Roger stared at her for a long time. He tested you, he whispered. My father believes that character is fate. He thinks people show their true face when they think no one of consequence is watching. You passed a test you didn't know you were taking. Suddenly the elevator chimed. Roger stood up abruptly, his face hardening into a mask of indifference. Stay quiet, Roger hissed. Do not speak unless I tell you to. The elevator doors slid open. A woman walked in. She was stunningly beautiful, with ice-blonde hair and a white dress that looked surgical in its precision. She was followed by two men in suits who looked more like lawyers than bodyguards. Roger, the woman said, her voice smooth and cold like polished marble. Security told me you brought a guest up, a civilian. She looked at Sarah with open disdain. Just ordering late-night food, Victoria, Roger lied smoothly. She got lost. Victoria walked closer. She was Arthur Sterling's second wife, Roger's stepmother. She was only a few years older than Roger. She looks like a drowned rat. Is this your new type? Or are you getting desperate for information about your father? Go to bed, Victoria, Roger said. He's dead, Roger, Victoria said, her eyes flashing. Accept it. The board votes on the succession plan in 48 hours. If Arthur isn't here to vote, his shares go into the trust, and I control the trust. She turned her gaze to Sarah. You. How much did he pay you for the night? Here. She reached into her purse and pulled out $100 bill, flicking it at Sarah. It landed on the floor. Take a cab. Leave. Sarah looked at the money. Then she looked at Victoria. The anger she felt at Rick in the diner was a spark. This was a forest fire. Sarah stood up. She didn't pick up the money. I'm not for sale, Sarah said, and neither is your husband. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? You heard me, Sarah said. She turned to Roger. I need to go check on my son. If you want my help finding Arthur, you know where to find me. But I'm not staying here with her. Sarah walked past Victoria, bumping her shoulder intentionally. She pressed the elevator button. Roger watched her go, a small smile playing on his lips. As the doors closed, he looked back at Victoria, who was fuming. She's got spirit, Roger said. I like her. But as Sarah descended to the lobby, her heart was hammering. She had just declared war on a woman who looked like she ate glass for breakfast, and she still didn't have a job. As she stepped out into the rainy night, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You left the sandwich. I'm still hungry. Meet me where the trains sleep. Sarah gasped. He was watching. Arthur was watching. Sarah didn't go home. She couldn't. The adrenaline was pumping through her veins like jet fuel. Where the trains sleep. That had to be the old rail yard on the south side of the city. It was a defunct terminal, a graveyard of rusted iron and graffiti-covered boxcars. It was dangerous, dark, and exactly the kind of place a billionaire on the run would hide. She checked her bank account on her phone. $14.50. Enough for an Uber to the rail yard, but not back. She booked it anyway. The rain had turned into a drizzle, creating a mist that hung low over the rusted tracks. The Uber driver dropped her off at the perimeter fence and sped away, clearly not wanting to linger in this neighborhood. "Arthur?" Sarah called out softly, climbing through a hole in the chain-link fence. The only sound was the wind whistling through the hollow skeletons of the trains. "Arthur, it's Sarah. I don't have the sandwich anymore, but I'm here." A shadow moved between two coal cars. Sarah froze. "Did you come alone?" The voice was weak, raspy. Arthur stepped out. He looked worse than he had in the diner. His face was pale, and he was clutching his left arm. "I'm alone," Sarah said, rushing to him. "Arthur, you're hurt." "Just a scratch," he winced. "I slipped getting off a freight car. I'm not as young as I used to be." Sarah guided him to sit on an old wooden crate. "Your son, Roger, I met him. He's looking for you. He's worried sick. He said Victoria and the board are trying to take over." Arthur let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Victoria, my beautiful mistake. She doesn't just want the company, Sarah. She wants to liquidate it. Strip it for parts. Pellington Industries supports thousands of families. She wants to sell it to an overseas conglomerate for a quick payout." He grabbed Sarah's hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. "I can't go back yet. Not until I have the proof." "Proof of what?" "That they poisoned me," Arthur said. "I have blood samples, hidden, and documents. They are in a safety deposit box, but I lost the key when they threw me off the boat." "So we're stuck," Sarah said. "Arthur, you need a doctor. You need a warm bed." "I need a proxy," Arthur said, looking her in the eyes. "I can't walk into the bank. The moment I show my face, Victoria's security team will intercept me. They'll claim I'm mentally unstable and have me committed. Once I'm in a facility, I'll never speak again." He reached into his dirty coat and pulled out a heavy, gold signet ring. It was engraved with a hawk crest. "This ring," Arthur said. "It's not just jewelry. It's an archaic authentication key. My grandfather designed the vault protocols at the First City Bank. If you present this ring, and the code—" "Bluebird?" Sarah guessed. "No. Bluebird was the distress signal. The vault code is the date my first wife died. 10/14/85. Sarah took the ring. It was heavy, warm from his skin. "You want me to walk into a bank, wearing a billionaire's ring, and ask for a safety deposit box?" "You have to," Arthur said. "Inside that box is the original incorporation deed. It has a clause, the founder's veto. It gives me absolute power to fire the board, regardless of stock price. If I have that document, I can walk into the meeting on Thursday and fire them all. If I don't, I lose everything. And they win." "Thursday is in 2 days," Sarah said. "Then we better hurry." A new voice echoed from the darkness. Sarah spun around. Standing 20 feet away, emerging from the fog, was a man. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing tactical gear. He held a taser in one hand. It was Silas, the driver. "Silas?" Sarah gasped. "How did you find us?" "Tracker in your phone, Ms. Bennett," Silas said calmly. "Roger is very thorough, but unfortunately, Roger isn't the highest bidder anymore." Arthur stood up, pushing Sarah behind him. "Who paid you, Silas? Victoria?" "Victoria offers cash," Silas said, stepping closer, the electricity arcing blue on the taser. "But Damien offers power." Damien. The name Roger hadn't mentioned. "Run, Sarah," Arthur whispered. "What? Run!" Arthur shoved her. Sarah stumbled back, her shoes slipping on the wet gravel. Silas didn't lunge for her. He lunged for Arthur. The old man swung his fist, but he was weak. Silas caught his arm and twisted. Arthur cried out, falling to his knees in the mud. "I have the package." Silas spoke into a radio on his shoulder. "Secure the perimeter." Sarah scrambled over the tracks. She looked back. Silas had Arthur pinned. He was looking at her. "The ring!" Arthur screamed. "Keep the ring safe!" Silas turned his head toward Sarah. "Get the girl!" he shouted to the shadows. 2 more figures emerged from the fog, sprinting toward her. Sarah didn't think. She ran. She ran like she was running from the eviction, from Rick, from her failures. She scrambled up a rusted ladder on the side of a grain silo, her breath tearing at her throat. The men were fast, but the terrain was treacherous. She reached the top of the silo and looked down. They were circling the bottom. She was trapped. But she had the ring. She shoved it deep into her bra. She looked around. The silo was connected to an old conveyor belt system that stretched across the street to an abandoned factory. It was a 50-foot drop, and the metal was rusted through in places. "There she is!" A flashlight beam hit her face. Sarah climbed onto the conveyor belt housing. It groaned under her weight. "Don't do it!" one of the men shouted. "You'll die!" "Better than what you'll do to me!" Sarah yelled back. She began to crawl across the narrow beam, the wind whipping her hair. Below her, the city lights blurred. She was terrified. She was just a waitress. She served coffee. She didn't do action movie stunts. But Arthur had trusted her. He had looked at her and seen someone worth building a longer table for. She made it halfway across when the metal screeched. A bolt sheared off. The beam lurched. Sarah slipped, her legs dangling into empty air. She screamed, clutching the wet metal with bleeding fingers. "Hold on!" She looked up. On the other side, on the roof of the factory, a figure appeared. It wasn't one of the bad guys. It was a teenager, maybe 16, wearing a hoodie and holding a skateboard. "Grab my hand," the kid yelled, lying flat on the roof and reaching out. Sarah swung her leg up, groaning with effort, and lunged. The kid grabbed her wrist. He was stronger than he looked. He hauled her over the edge onto the gravel roof of the factory. They lay there for a second, panting. "You okay, lady?" the kid asked, eyes wide. That was gnarly. Sarah sat up, checking for the ring. It was safe. She looked at the kid. "Who are you?" "I'm Jax. I come up here to think. Saw you running from those suits. Figured you weren't with them." Sarah looked back at the rail yard. She saw headlights. They were taking Arthur away. "They took him," Sarah whispered, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "They took Arthur." "Who's Arthur?" Jax asked. Sarah stood up, wiping her face. Her fear was hardening into something cold and heavy. "A friend. And I'm going to get him back." She turned to Jax. "Do you know how to get off this roof without being seen?" "Yeah." Jax grinned. "Fire escape on the north side. Dumps you into the alley behind the donut shop." "Lead the way," Sarah said. "We have a bank to rob." "Wait, for real?" Jax's eyes popped. "Not exactly," Sarah said, touching the ring near her heart. "We're just making a withdrawal, a big one." Wednesday morning broke over Seattle like a bruised eye, purple, grey, and swollen with rain clouds. Sarah Bennett sat on the floor of a 24-hour laundromat, watching her jeans spin in the dryer. She was wearing a pair of oversized sweatpants Jax had stolen from his own closet for her. "You look like a spy," Jax said, sitting on a folding table, swinging his legs. He was eating a bag of chips for breakfast. A really tired, broke spy. "Thanks, Jax," Sarah muttered. She held Arthur's ring in her palm, rolling the heavy gold over her knuckles. It felt warm, almost humming with the weight of the promise she'd made. She had $4 left. Her phone was dead to keep Silas from tracking it again. She was off the grid, exhausted, and terrifyingly out of her depth. "So the plan," Jax said, crumping the chip bag. "We walk into First City Bank, the Fort Knox of banks. You flash the ring. They give you the magic box. We save the billionaire. Easy." Not easy, Sarah corrected. I look like I slept in a dumpster. Banks like that. They have security guards who judge your shoes before they check your ID. If I walk in looking like this, they'll escort me out before I reach the teller. Jax hopped off the table. Then we got to fix the look. My mum, she's a size 6. She's got this suit she wears for court dates. She's on the night shift at the hospital. She won't be home till noon. Sarah looked at the kid. Jax, I can't steal your mum's clothes. Borrow, Jax grinned. Permanent loan. Come on, you want to save Arthur or not? 2 hours later, Sarah stood in front of the revolving doors of First City Bank. She was wearing a charcoal grey pantsuit that was slightly too tight in the shoulders, and her hair was pulled back into a severe, sleek bun. She wore sunglasses to hide the dark circles under her eyes. Showtime, she whispered to herself. She pushed through the doors. The lobby was silent, echoing with the soft click of expensive shoes on marble floors. It smelled of money, crisp paper and sanitizer. She walked straight to the executive services desk. The woman behind the counter, a severe brunette with glasses on a chain, didn't even look up from her typing. Can I help you? The woman asked, her tone implying she hoped she couldn't. I need to access a safety deposit box, Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. Box 001. The woman stopped typing. She looked up slowly, her eyes narrowing behind the lenses. Box 001. Ma'am, the single-digit boxes are reserved for founding members. Those accounts haven't been accessed in decades. I am aware, Sarah said. She placed her hand on the counter, palm down. Then she lifted her fingers to reveal the ring. The gold hawk crest caught the light. The woman's face went pale. She recognized the ring. Everyone in the financial world knew the sterling crest. I see, the woman stammered. She picked up a phone, her hands trembling. Mr. Archibald, you need to come down. Now, it's the sterling account. Minutes later, a short, balding man in a three-piece suit practically ran out of the back office. Mr. Archibald looked at the ring, then at Sarah. He looked suspicious. I have not seen this ring in 10 years, Archibald said, his voice low. Possession of this item does not guarantee access. You need the cipher. 10/14/85, Sarah said clearly. The date Arthur's first wife died. Archibald let out a long breath. He nodded solemnly. Follow me. He led her into the vault. It was a room of steel and silence. The walls were lined with thousands of drawers. Archibald walked to the very end, to a large box at eye level. He used 2 keys to unlock the outer panel, then stepped back. The ring is the key for the inner cylinder, he said. Sarah inserted the signet ring into a unique, hawk-shaped depression in the metal. It clicked. The door swung open. Inside, there was a thick leather portfolio and a small, black digital recorder. Sarah grabbed them, her heart pounding. She opened the portfolio, the deed of incorporation, and there, in bold ink at the bottom, the founder's veto. She had it, the weapon to kill the board. She turned to leave, but Archibald blocked the doorway. He looked apologetic. I am sorry, miss, he said quietly. But when Box 001 is accessed, a silent alarm notifies the primary account holder's legal proxy. Who is the legal proxy? Sarah asked, a pit forming in her stomach. Mr. Damien Cross, Archibald said, the chairman of the board. Sarah's blood ran cold. How long ago was he notified? 10 minutes ago, Archibald said, stepping aside. If you run, you might make the back exit. Sarah didn't wait. She bolted. She burst out the rear fire exit into the alleyway. Jax was there, waiting on his skateboard, looking terrified. Sarah, the black SUV, it's circling the block. We have to move, Sarah yelled, clutching the portfolio to her chest. They ran down the alley. splashing through puddles. Tires screeched at the end of the street. The black SUV blocked the exit. Silas stepped out, flanked by 2 other men. "Nowhere to go, Sarah," Silas said, smiling. "Hand over the paperwork. Damien is very eager to burn it." Sarah backed up. Behind her was a brick wall. Trapped. "Jax," Sarah whispered. "Do you know any tricks?" "Just one," Jax said. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a spray paint can. He shook it. Clack, clack, clack. "Hey, ugly!" Jax screamed. He threw the can. Not at Silas, but at the ground in front of him. As it hit, Jax stomped on it with his skateboard. The can exploded, sending a massive cloud of neon blue paint and compressed gas into the air. Silas roared, blinded for a second. "Climb!" Jax yelled, pointing to a dumpster pushed against a fire escape. Sarah scrambled up. She was fueled by pure adrenaline. She hauled herself up the iron stairs just as Silas wiped the paint from his eyes and fired a taser. The prongs sparked against the metal railing, inches from her foot. She didn't look back. She and Jax disappeared over the rooftops, vanishing into the labyrinth of the city. They had the papers. But now, the hunt was truly on. Thursday morning, the day of the vote. Sarah sat in a booth at a crowded Waffle House on the outskirts of town, the only place she felt safe enough to breathe. She was wearing a hoodie over the stolen suit. Jax was asleep in the booth opposite her, head on the table. She had the documents. But she had a bigger problem. The founder's veto required Arthur's signature, witnessed by the board, or his physical presence to enact it. If she walked in there alone, they would just shred the papers and throw her out. She needed Arthur. She turned on the small black digital recorder she had found in the box. She put in her earbuds and pressed play. Arthur's voice, strong and clear, filled her ears. "If you are listening to this, I am likely compromised. The medication they are giving me, it makes the world foggy. It's Damien. He's working with Victoria. They are funneling money through a shell company called Obsidian. If I disappear, contact Roger. He is difficult, and he is angry with me, but he is not corrupt. He is the only one who can clear the building's security. Tell him the Hawk flies at midnight." Sarah paused the tape. Roger. She had to trust him. She had no choice. She went to the payphone in the back of the Waffle House. She dialed the number from the napkin again. Sterling Law. "Put me through to Roger," Sarah said, her voice hard. "Tell him the Hawk flies at midnight, and tell him I know about Obsidian." 10 seconds later, Roger was on the line. "Where are you?" "Stop asking me that," Sarah said. "I have the veto, but I know you can't get your father out alone. Silas betrayed you." "Silas is a dead man walking," Roger growled. "They have my father at the Pellington Medical Center, the psychiatric wing. They're drugging him to keep him incoherent for the vote. They're going to declare him mentally incapacitated at 10 a.m. "It's 8:30, Sarah said. "We have 90 minutes. "Meet me at the west loading dock of the tower," Roger said. "I'm coming for you. And Sarah?" "Yeah?" "Don't get in the car if the driver is Silas." At 9:15 a.m., Sarah and Roger stood in the freight elevator of the Pellington Tower. Roger looked tired, heavy bags under his eyes, but he was armed with a security key card and a grim determination. Jax had been sent home. This part was too dangerous for a kid. "Here's the play," Roger said, checking his watch. "The board meeting is on the 40th floor. My father is being held on the 12th. We split up." "No," Sarah said. "We stick together. We get Arthur, then we go to the board." "There's no time," Roger snapped. "Victoria has private security guarding the 12th floor. I have to draw them off. I'll trigger a security breach in the server room on 14. When they move to intercept, you get my father out." "Me?" Sarah asked. "I'm a waitress, Roger, not a commando." "You're the only one he trusts," Roger said, looking at her. "He won't go with me. He thinks I'm part of it. He thinks I want his money. But you bought him coffee when he was nobody. He'll follow you." The elevator dinged at floor 12. "Go," Roger said. He stayed in the elevator to go up to 14. Sarah stepped out into a sterile white hallway. It smelled of antiseptic. She clutched the leather portfolio to her chest like a shield. She walked down the hall, trying to look like she belonged. 2 large men in suits stood outside room 1204. Sarah took a deep breath. She pulled out her phone, which she had charged for 5 minutes at the Waffle House, and set an alarm to ring in 10 seconds. She walked up to them. "Excuse me? Dr. Evans sent me for the patient's vitals." The guard crossed his arms. "Dr. Evans is a woman. You're not medical staff." Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, the fire alarm lights flashed, and a siren wailed. Roger had triggered the system upstairs. "Code red," the guard's radio crackled. "Breach on 14. All units converge." The guards looked at each other. "Stay here," one said to the other. "I'll check the stairs." One guard left. One remained. Sarah looked at the remaining guard. He was huge. There was no way she could fight him. So she didn't. She pointed down the hall behind him. "Oh my God, is that smoke?" The guard turned, just for a split second, instinct taking over. Sarah didn't run away. She ran at him. She used the heavy leather portfolio, slamming the brass corner of it into the side of his neck with all her strength. It wasn't a knockout blow like in the movies, but it stunned him. He stumbled back, gasping. Sarah didn't wait. She keyed the code Arthur had given her, 1014485, into the doorpad. It clicked green. She threw herself inside and locked the door behind her just as the guard slammed his body against it. "Arthur!" Sarah yelled. The room was dim. Arthur Sterling was strapped to a bed, an IV drip in his arm. He looked frail, his eyes glassy and unfocused. "Arthur, it's Sarah!" She rushed to his side, ripping the IV tape off his arm. "The waitress, the pie, remember?" Arthur blinked. He looked at her, his eyes swimming in confusion. "Bluebird?" "Yes, the Bluebird has landed," she said, helping him sit up. "We have to go. Now." They took my shoes," Arthur whispered, ashamed. "We don't need shoes," Sarah said, pulling him up. He was heavy, dead weight. "We need a miracle." The door hinge began to buckle. The guard was kicking it in. Sarah looked around. The window. It was sealed shut, but it overlooked the atrium balcony on the floor below. She grabbed a heavy metal oxygen tank from the corner. "Stand back, Arthur." She swung the tank, smashing the glass. It shattered outward. The wind roared in. "We have to jump," Sarah said. "It's 10 feet down to the terrace." "I can't," Arthur said, trembling. "You can," Sarah said fiercely. "You built this tower, Arthur. You own it. Now let's take it back." The door splintered open. The guard lunged in. Sarah grabbed Arthur's waist and pulled him out into the air. They landed hard on the terrace below, rolling on the astroturf. Sarah groaned, her shoulder screaming in pain. Arthur was coughing, but he was up. The cold air seemed to wake him up a little. "The elevator," Arthur rasped, pointing to a private executive lift on the terrace. "My thumbprint. It still works." They stumbled to the lift. Arthur pressed his thumb to the scanner. Access granted. They fell inside just as the guard appeared on the balcony above, shouting into his radio. "Floor 40, Arthur said, his voice gaining strength. "Take me to my boardroom." The 40th floor was silent, insulated by mahogany doors and soundproof glass. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was tense. Victoria sat at the head of the table. Damien Cross, a man with a smile like a shark, stood by the window. 12 other board members sat around the long table. "The motion is on the table," Damien said smoothly. "To declare Arthur Pellington Sterling mentally unfit and transfer voting proxy to the chairman. All in favour?" Hands began to go up. 1, 2, 5. "I need a unanimous vote for the immediate sale of assets," Damien said. Victoria raised her hand, a smirk on her lips. "I vote yes, for his own good." "Then it is decided," Damien said. "We will proceed with the liquidation." Bam! The double doors of the boardroom didn't just open. They were thrown open. Sarah Bennett stood there, her suit torn, hair wild, bleeding from a cut on her forehead. She looked like a warrior. And leaning on her shoulder, looking weak but standing tall, was Arthur Sterling. The room gasped. Victoria dropped her pen. "I object," Arthur said. His voice was raspy, but it carried the weight of $1 billion. "Security!" Damien yelled. "Get this lunatic out of here! He's escaped from the psych ward!" 2 guards moved toward them. "Stop!" Sarah shouted. She slammed the leather portfolio onto the mahogany table. It slid down the length of the surface, stopping exactly in front of Damien. "Read it," Sarah challenged. Damien looked at the portfolio. He opened it, his face drained of color. "The founder's veto," Sarah announced, her voice ringing out. Clause 4, Section A. In the event of a hostile takeover or a vote of no confidence, the founder retains the right to dissolve the current board immediately and without severance. Sarah looked at Victoria. "It means you're fired. All of you." "This is a forgery," Victoria shrieked, standing up. "He's senile. He doesn't know what day it is." Arthur stepped away from Sarah. He walked to the head of the table. He looked at the empty chair, his chair. Then he looked at Victoria. The fog in his eyes was gone, replaced by cold, hard steel. "Today is Thursday, Victoria," Arthur said clearly. "It is the day I take back my company, and it is the last day you will ever set foot in this building." He turned to the rest of the table. "Get out!" The silence in the boardroom didn't last. It was shattered by the wail of sirens circling Pellington Tower. Damien Cross slumped in his chair, his shark-like grin finally erased. Victoria, however, went down screaming. As Detective Miller snapped handcuffs around her wrists, charging her with conspiracy and attempted murder, she lunged toward Sarah. "You're nobody!" Victoria spat, her face twisted with hate. "You're just a waitress who got lucky." Sarah, exhausted and bleeding from a cut on her forehead, didn't flinch. "I'm the woman who bought him a slice of pie when you wouldn't even buy him a coat," she said quietly. "I'd say that makes me somebody." As the police dragged the conspirators away, Arthur turned to Sarah. He looked frail but triumphant. "You saved my legacy, Sarah." "I just did what was right," she whispered. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a crushing realization. She didn't belong here among the mahogany and millions. She was just a broke single mom who was late to pick up her son. She turned and walked out before Arthur could thank her properly. Friday arrived, eviction day. Sarah sat on her apartment floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes. She had 4 dustlers to her name. The Billionaire was safe, but her reality remained brutal. When the heavy knock came at the door, she flinched, expecting the landlord to change the locks. She opened the door to find Arthur Sterling standing in the hallway, leaning on a cane, with Roger and Jax beaming behind him. "You left in a hurry," Arthur said, stepping over a box. "We had to track you down." "I'm moving out," Sarah said, fighting back tears. "Mr. Henderson gave me until noon." "We met Mr. Henderson," Roger said, handing her a thick envelope. "We bought the building. You don't have to move." Sarah opened the envelope. Inside was a check. She counted the zeros, her breath catching in her throat. $5 million. I can't take this," she stammered. "It was just coffee." "It was an investment in my humanity," Arthur corrected gently. "But this money is just back pay." "I'm retiring, Sarah. I'm starting a foundation to help the homeless, to build longer tables, not higher fences. I need a partner to run it." Sarah looked at her son, then at the check, and finally at Arthur. A smile broke through her tears. "I'm in. But I have one condition." "Name it," Arthur said. "We start with the diner." 2 days later, Rick was scrolling on his phone at Louie's diner when Sarah walked in, wearing a sharp blazer and holding a set of keys. "We're closed," Rick barked. "Beat it, Bennett." "I'm not here for a shift, Rick," Sarah said, slamming the deed on the counter. "I'm here to inspect my property. I bought the place." Rick's jaw hit the floor. "You... what?" "Things are changing," Sarah said, pointing to the kitchen. "Grab an apron, Rick. You're on dish duty. And if you ever talk down to a customer again, you're fired." As Rick scrambled to the back, terrified, the door chimed. Arthur walked in and took his favorite booth. Sarah grabbed the coffee pot, pouring him a steaming mug. "On the house," she smiled. Sarah Bennett didn't just survive, she thrived. The Open Door Foundation became the largest charitable organization in the Pacific Northwest, saving thousands of lives, including the invisible people society tried to ignore. Arthur Sterling spent his remaining years not in a boardroom, but in the community, often sitting in Sarah's diner, talking to strangers. They say money changes people, and it does. But sometimes it just reveals who they really were all along. For Rick, it revealed a bully. For Victoria, a monster. But for Sarah, money was just a tool to build that longer table she had always talked about. She never forgot the cold rain, the ache in her wrists, or the fear of eviction. And because she remembered, she made sure no one else had to feel it alone. $5. A slice of cherry pie. A single act of kindness. It didn't just buy a meal, it bought a future. And that is the incredible story of how one waitress changed history with a single cup of coffee. It proves that you never truly know who you are talking to, and that kindness is the only investment that never fails. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And I want to know, if you were in Sarah's shoes and found out the homeless man was a billionaire, would you have helped him escape the hospital? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. We have an even crazier mystery coming up next week about a janitor who accidentally solved a math equation that the government was trying to hide. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.